deserve to have the best physical, mental, spiritual. Zealous Wellness with Mike Hollis.
Hello and welcome to another episode of Zealous Wellness with Mike Hollis. I'm your host. Go Jags! I mean, I've come out with that a lot on these episodes and just trying to kind of get some hype there because my Jags are doing really good. This year didn't start out incredibly great. I mean, we had a little some fallouts in the middle of the season or so, but we've been on a roll and we won yesterday. Again, I was at that game. It was a long, fun day for me. But yeah, we played those pesky Titans that come in here to Jacksonville and always seem to play really well against us. And we've had seasons. Well, I can tell you the seasons back when I played. We were 14-2 one year. Yeah, we were really good. This is back in 1999, and we were 14-2 as a Jaguars franchise. And the two losses in regular season were both by the Titans. Those Nashville, those Tennessee Titans. But they had our number that year, and so we go into the playoffs. And I think that was the year we beat up Miami Dolphins pretty good. Dan Marino's last game, we beat them like 62-10 or something. I think that was the game we had. We had a bye week, then we played the Dolphins, beat up on them, and then we, of course, played the Tennessee Titans in the AFC Championship game, and we lost to them again. So the only three losses we had that year as a Jaguars franchise were three losses by the Tennessee Titans. So anyway, so point of tonight's subject, I don't want to get too caught up into the Titans because they've had our number for a while, but you know, the way we played against them in certain situations, and even during the times I played during those years when I was playing, we had a camaraderie about us. We had some trust. We had some guys that really, you know, were able to rely on themselves and to be accountable for others and all that stuff. So there's a lot of similarity that I'm seeing, you know, with the Jaguars. And really, what I'm trying to refer to is kind of like that. There's something clicked. You know, that's what teams do. They find and solve problems. Okay, so if you're not winning, where are the problems? You reverse engineer it, you find out where these things lie, and you fix the problems. Of course, there's always advancements every year. Everyone's getting better every game, so you got to keep up with that as well. So there's a lot of reasons why teams win and lose, but the teams that kind of are on the same page, who think differently, and that's really the subject of tonight's episode. I want to talk to you guys about different ways of thinking and why you can become really successful with just changing the way you perceive stuff. I've been doing that a long time in my whole life as far as a kicker is concerned. Of course, when I'm coaching, I'm changing minds of kickers who think a certain way, and I'm teaching them to think a different way. Because if you understand the way I teach and the things that I'm teaching, you'll understand why they are better than what your instincts are telling you. That's another thing I've been talking to a lot of guys about their instincts. I'm a kicking coach that fights against a kicker's instinct. Their instinct is to do things that I'd say, no, don't do. Okay. So, but I can prove to you and I show you. And of course, this is what I'm telling little Johnny when I'm working with him for the first time. I said, I can show you and prove to you that these things are doing that I'm telling you they're going to do. There's a lot of reasons why this technique is good and it's the most efficient and effective way of kicking, in my opinion. But it takes a different way of thinking. That's really where I'm going with that. And again, I'm using this concept of thinking differently for every aspect in your life. It doesn't matter whether you're trying to work for a profession like as a football player. You have to think differently and a little more advanced than the ones that aren't, because it's going to take that sense of level, that level of understanding and ability and thinking differently, knowing what's the right way and what's the wrong way. There's a very large advancement at the highest level of football in the world. But anything in life in general, like any decision you're going to make, you got to think about that decision. Is something you can control? There's a lot of variables within everyday decisions that we make on a daily basis. With regards to our fitness, with regards to our health, with regards to our job, it doesn't really matter. Friendship, family, all this stuff, politics even. But again, there's a really a unique way of understanding things, and sometimes it takes a little time to prove that these things are actually the right way, and they work together. They work much better. And so when you're talking about coming up with a certain plan or a goal, or you gotta, your New Year's resolution, you're going to lose some weight, you're going to get back in shape. Okay, well, how do we do that? Okay, we got to think differently. Okay, you have to understand what it takes to have discipline first off, but also think a little bit differently about what controls what does what. Educate yourself. That's another big deal. We've got to educate ourselves and understand, and really that really comes down to making the informed decisions based on how you're going to think differently about these opportunities to make those decisions. So when you've got an opportunity, you've got to make a decision. You have to think about that, or anything that you're working on, you have to think about prior to you actually, achieving or doing or displaying anything that you're about to make a change and make a certain decision about something. There's got to be a reason for that, and that's really deep inside what you need to figure out is the best reason, the best way to give you that best informed decision on what you're about to make. And it does require sometimes to think a little differently, because there are perceptions. That's really why I keep saying perceptions a lot, because our perceptions make us think differently. If we didn't have the already perceived condition, the perceptions of what to expect when I do a certain action a certain way, then I'm not going to believe you when you tell me to do it a different way, because I've always known that this is my perception, is this is the way it's done over here. Well, I'm saying, no, try this over here and you'll be surprised. I love that. That's one of the best acknowledgments for me as a kicking coach for doing this almost 20 years. One of the best feelings of relief, and yes, I've made a difference in this child's life or this man's life, whatever the athlete that I'm working with, is when I see them smile after they've kicked that ball and they look at me and they smile and they say, yeah, I get it now. I'm like, yes, okay, finally you got it. You understand now what I'm talking about. So I'm going to take a quick break. I went a little bit over time here for that, but after our quick break from our sponsor, we'll talk a little bit about changing the mindset and understanding how to think differently about certain things, whether they're incredibly important, whether they're not incredibly important. They all are pretty important. I mean, they all come to some conclusion, and they are the direction of your life from that point on. So we have to understand how we can change the way we think about certain decisions we make in our life, and we'll talk a lot about that after we return from a quick word from our sponsor.
At 3, we want to give you the true health benefits that you're paying for, something you can feel and see a difference quickly. Each product is packed with powerful plant-based nutrients that are combined through a proprietary curation process and then infused with innovative cellular absorption technologies to ensure the nutrients absorb into the cells for maximum wellness. The quality and effectiveness of our life-changing products is evident by their approval to be included in the well-known Prescriber's Digital Reference, or PDR. PDR has been a valuable resource to the medical doctors and providers in the healthcare community for decades. Our products are GMO-free, clinically studied, and third-party tested, all designed to support health and proactive wellness for everyone.
And welcome back. So before we left, we were talking a lot about the way we think about things and how to change kind of the way we do think about stuff, because you'll be surprised at certain things. And I kind of like to relate my mindset with regards to everything in life. When you think about fitness, you think about, weight and your diet and the way you want to feel, your just overall health and wellness. You think about trying to be a professional athlete. Back in the day, I've told you guys this before, that my intention wasn't to make it the NFL. My intention was to be as good as I possibly could be. And whatever level that got me to, I have to be okay with. Okay. But I had to find that certain solution to make me the best that I could possibly be. And that's where I'm going with this whole concept of learning how to think differently, because the style that I was taught that actually got me to the NFL and was able to do some great things for me personally, because I was able to trust it. I learned a certain system and a technique that did not go with the traditional mindset of kicking. Again, my instincts were fighting my coach learning this stuff. I was like, this is crazy. I don't want to do this. This doesn't make any sense. But after I started to learn about it and understand it and start to trust it more, I became more, better at it, clearly. And it all kind of starts with trust. If you trust it and you're able to do the pieces and they all fit together. Now, that doesn't happen overnight. It takes a process. It's a long time to do. But once you get good at doing those pieces all over again, and on every single kick, and you're doing the same process you've been working on, and all those pieces finally match together on one specific kick, and you get your best kick ever, that's obviously what you want to do every time. But the process of learning that is what I'm referring to when it takes a strong, disciplined mind to understand what you're being taught. Is it right? Is it wrong? And convince me that it's the right way, because I've always thought it was this way. Well, that's the same thing with your diet, your exercise. Well, these people, I'm going to get in shape. My New Year's resolution, I'm going to my overall health and wellness. I'm going to diet, and I'm going to make sure that I'm eating better, and then I'm going to work out too. Well, if you don't know what to do, now people can have some common sense and say, yeah, I'm going to decrease my caloric intake. It's all about portion control. I'm going to eat healthier things. Yes, common sense tells me that anything growing out of the ground, anything growing from a tree or in the ground, or anything natural is better than something out of a bag that has ingredients list. Okay, that's common sense, but there's probably a lot more to it. Talk about getting involved in the NFL and being the best kicker in the NFL, which takes a lot. Well, I had to find all the little secrets. Okay, this is like the same way of changing someone's mind about their diet. Like, well, yeah, the common sense stuff tells me I can eat stuff that are, grown and that are naturally healthy, clearly, because they don't have all this. But there's a lot more to it. Like, what else are you eating besides, the processed foods? There's things in there that you may not think are bad for you that actually are. And that's where you need to think differently about these kind of things. Okay. And so I know that our traditional education, you can go back all the way down to the Rockefellers and think about where our educational books, who's in charge of our educational books from way back in the day, even the books that I read as a kid. Well, there's a certain organization that's in charge of what we are learning. Okay, I'll just put it like that. I don't get too crazy down a rabbit hole here, but just know that there's a lot of things that we've been told that are not true at all. Okay, and that's just my assumption, of course, but I've seen evidence to prove otherwise. Okay, again, you have to understand and look deeper into these kind of things before you really can put a lot of your trust into them. So that kind of changes the way you think. You got to think outside the box when it comes to denying what you thought you knew. That's the hardest part about understanding this kind of stuff. Changing the way you think, because you've been so ingrained on thinking a certain way that it's going to be very difficult for you to change your mind. Okay, that's the hardest part about this. And I can tell you as a kicking coach, as a kicker myself, I always relate to that, because that's where I've drawn all this knowledge, I guess, my personal knowledge, of course, from my road to getting to the NFL, because there was a lot of changes and a lot of things that I had to overcome and think differently about, because I always felt it was this way and this felt better for me. But my coaches tell me to do it this way, so I'm going to listen to him, and I'm going to, because again, he's got the history that I can trust. Now, when I get better at it, when I'm getting better at my diet, when I'm getting better going to the gym and doing certain exercises and certain things differently in the weight room that before I wasn't really aware of, I was thinking I was doing the lifting the right way, and apparently it was the wrong way. Well, you got to find those things out. And if you're going to spend the time and the energy and the effort into dieting and making sure you're eating well to get healthy, get your overall health and wellness there, fitness, to get back in shape, lose some fat, feel better about yourself, all this stuff, your job, your regular, you want to be the employee of the month or the year or whatever, whatever the case may be. You want to really make an impact and a difference in your job and your career. It's going to take some discipline and some time. It's not going to be easy. Okay. So, but that's the thing, is like, you have to understand what decisions you're making and how are you coming to those conclusions. That's really the bottom line, is how are you finding out the conclusion that you've determined whether this is the right way to do it or the wrong way to do it or whatever the case may be. So you have to, and I think it's through experience. I think you put yourself out there. You have to try things. And of course, yes, professional knowledge, people that and you can look at them and look at their history of their success and say, this guy's been around it long enough. I've seen great testimonies, the guy, gal, whatever, that's doing some health nutrition aspect that you really like. And like, you know what? I trust these people. It makes sense to me. Some of it, most of it, whatever. And they, of course, they may, because they're not going to share all their secrets to you. You got to pay for the secrets, right? And I do that with my kicking too. I don't want to give up too much information on my kicking, because why would you want to pay me for anything more than if you got everything I just said? But clearly, I've got tons more than just a couple things I would tell a kicker. But that's what I would say to somebody in the nutrition field too, whether it's fitness or nutrition, things like that. I say, well, I can give you the basic stuff, but we're going to get a little bit more scientific, a lot more scientific. It give you that fine-tuned stuff to really make the biggest difference, because you can make a difference. I can tell any athlete out there in the world, you work hard, you're going to get good at whatever you work hard on. Plus, at their ages, they're growing up, they're getting through that maturity level where they're going to improve naturally anyways. But I don't want kids to have the impression just because they're going to improve naturally that they're working on the right stuff. That's to say the same thing as someone doing a diet or a fitness exercise new program. They might, I've talked about this before. You may not feel great at first, especially with the exercise part. You're going to feel tight and kind of tired and unmotivated. You got to get over the hump. Okay, let's start with that. Okay, once you get over that hump, you're good to go. Now we just focus and trust the process that hopefully somebody's teaching you, or somebody, you've done some research and you figured out what you need to do to get yourself in a better shape. And you know that you're doing the right stuff, even though you may not like it, even though you may not agree with it. Embrace the suck. Okay, we've talked about that in a few episodes before. Okay, just embracing the suck seasons. There's going to be some suck seasons, meaning there's going to be some periods of time in your life that things aren't going to go your way, and you're not going to want to. I want to eat more than the 1,000 calories. I'm hungry. I'm tired of not eating much. Okay, but again, it takes some self-discipline, some sacrifice. That's again not for everybody, and that's what I want to emphasize to you guys really, and know that it's not as hard as you might think. And the other thing that comes with everything I'm talking about tonight is the confidence. You build yourself so much confidence when you trust the decisions you make and you go for them. That's a huge deal. When you can understand how to trust something that you've gotten pretty good at, you know that works, and you put it in a situation where you need it to work again, you just trust it and you just do it again. But the road it takes to get you to that level of not only the trust, but also the physical act of doing whatever it is. Now, I'm talking about a certain process, kicking, for example. When you talk about weightlifting, yes, there's certain ways to lift weights and certain exercises you can do. You can definitely do them wrong. Eating, yeah, it's black and white. Eat this or don't eat that. You know what I mean? But you got to know what to eat and what not to eat. What kind of oils to stay away from? What kind of things that in general that you may not be good for your body at the time, whatever. So you have to figure those things out, and that's where you have to know and trust your source. So find someone, find an organization, find a program that you trust. And again, it may take you time to trust that certain program or that person, because you want to see what they've done in the past, see what other people talk about them. You want to understand, and once you know in your heart that yes, this is a person, this is an organization, these are the people I want to surround myself with. You're in the gym, you're like, I like this group. I've been lifting with these guys over here. They don't take it very serious. I'm real serious about getting myself back in shape. I'm going to kind of hang out with these guys over here more, because they're a little bit more intentional about coming to the gym. They're not on their phones as much as these guys over here. So pick the people that you want to be around that are motivating. It will motivate you as well. That's another thing too. I've talked about in previous episodes, is finding the accountability partners, finding people that are on the same page as you, so you can get on them when they get on you. Or like you don't want to be there one day and there's we made a commitment, and the other way around. One day you're not going to want to be there. We made a commitment. Let's going. We're going. Okay. So that's kind of the thing is kind of having that accountability and having that understanding, knowing that you're having to make decisions about certain things in your life that you've already told yourself, I want to change. I want to change something. I want to be the best that I can be at whatever it is you're wanting to put your effort into. Well, like I said, there's going to be all kinds of decisions. You're going to have to understand how to think differently about these decisions, how to know. And again, thinking differently comes from just a different way of looking at it. So again, there's a lot of ways that people look at certain things and certain directions that they would tell you to go, and so you got to figure out which way you think is the right. Now, I know that it could be a very difficult decision, because there's all kinds of opinions, and you can't just do a little bit of ones and a little bit of the others. You got to go with one or the other. Now, that's a tough situation, but you have to understand that, again, doing the research and understanding what makes it right, what makes it wrong in your mind, and having faith is another huge, huge, huge deal. I have to have faith that my form and my technique is going to kick the ball for me. I have to have faith that I know that I feel terrible right now, but I'm going to the gym. I have to have faith that knowing that after, and here's a cool thing about working out. When you're done with the workout, you can tell yourself, man, I'm glad I came. Okay. Going into the workout, you may not feel that way, but it's a decision that you committed to. That's one thing I really emphasize here too, is being accountable for yourself. Once you do all the due diligence on whatever it is you're going to be doing, knowing what process is the right way, knowing what foods you want to eat, knowing which direction you want to take your new nutritional diet because of the information you've been given, what you want to know, what kind of workout you're going to do, and you have a plan, okay, then commit to it. That's the worst thing about, and again, you never know until you try. And what I like to emphasize is you're not trying long enough if you quit. Okay. There's got to be some big reasons why you quit something, anything in life. Okay. So always understand that. I couldn't ever find good reasons to quit things. That's why I kept doing things. And sometimes like the business that I owned and bought after I retired from football was an eBay drop-off store. I put a lot of money into it. It did not work out. I failed. The company kind of failed. The process was flawed. There's a lot of reasons, excuses I can give you, but I failed. But the thing was, I'm stubborn. I'm wanting to make it work. That one got me a little bit of trouble, but I learned some lessons throughout that whole process. But my point is, I liked it. I wanted to keep trying. I wanted to win. So again, but when it comes to your life and your lifestyle and your health and wellness and your physical shape and your well-being, all that stuff, you have to really stick to a commitment, because I can promise you, I said this in the last episode too, your health and then the cost of your health will be a heck of a lot cheaper today than it will be down the road. If you do the cheaper route today, as far as like processed foods and then going with the pills and stuff that the doctor is going to recommend you, the big pharma drugs to put the Band-Aid on the problem that they probably started at the beginning. Okay. So if you go that route, you're going to be spending a lot more in the long run than if you just ate healthy, ate smart, worked out, took care of yourself today. It's going to be a lot cheaper today doing it that way than it will be in the long term if you go that way. Okay. It might be more satisfactory to your taste buds. You're going to feel great about eating, foods that make you feel good. That dopamine is going to be, released, and you're going to feel good about what you're eating. But in the long run, you're not going to feel good at all, because it's going to come up to bite you. You won't even know it. So again, it always goes back to that first decision, or those decisions you made to eat the crappy food, or to not work out, or to take your job for granted, to not show up one day, call in sick and kind of fib and lie. Maybe you weren't sick. There's all kinds of things that you can do that takes you away from your original commitment. Okay. And that's where you have to, once you make a commitment to do something, you got to stick to it. Okay. And again, having others hold you accountable is pretty powerful, but holding yourself, I've always told you guys this. I always, mention, put something like, if you're going to quit, you write a goal down or something you want to achieve, put it on a Post-it note in your mirror in your bathroom, so you get to see it every single day. Well, if the day comes where you decide that you want to quit, you're going to have to pull that little thing off the mirror. Well, guess what's looking right back at you at the mirror as you're pulling your little Post-it note down? Yourself. So you're just telling yourself, hey, I'm quitting on you. You know what I mean? So you have to feel bad for quitting. You do. I feel bad for letting teammates down, knowing if I really didn't give it my best effort, I feel like crap. I feel terrible. So that's the thing, is like, you got to hold yourself accountable too. So understand how to think differently about, don't be afraid to get outside the box. And that's really where a lot of people in psychologists, scientists, people like that talk about that all the time. It's like, if you don't feel uncomfortable, you're probably not going in the right direction. Within reason, clearly, you know what I mean. Just, don't get to an extensive uncomfortableness. But if you feel awkward about something, that's why I tell my kickers a lot. I say, if you didn't feel like you're going to fall on your butt that one, or if you didn't feel really awkwardly far back from the ball, I say these things. I start to say, if you didn't feel like this, then you probably did it wrong. And I felt good. Like, okay, well then you probably did it wrong, because it didn't feel different to you. You didn't feel like you noticed anything different. Then you didn't really do it right then. So that's really another point I'd make too, is that you don't really know if you're doing anything different unless you feel different about doing it. You don't really know. You really have to test yourself at times. And again, I always go back to that concept of just understanding what's on the other side. You'll never know unless you go up that hill. You'll never know unless you give it a shot. What can happen? You maybe you not like it. Again, it just depends on what we're talking about, but you made the commitment. So that's another fear that a lot of people have, is like they don't want to, stick with it or change the way they think and do something differently because they're afraid to, their commitment. They might, they made a commitment to do this, but they're still afraid. Like no, if you made a commitment, do it. Okay, so it's really not as hard as you think, and that's really kind of where I'm kind of leaning off, in this episode, by just talking about how so easy it is once you test yourself. And that's where I think a lot of us, I've talked a lot about how much, we have a lot more potential than we think. Our brain capacity, or the way we think, the way we, do things physically, there's a lot more in us than we ever think possible. So that's what I'm saying. When you're making decisions like that, you'll never know until you've tested yourself to get over that hump. Okay. So that's where I really want people to understand, is that unless you try, unless you feel uncomfortable with something, you're probably just going to stay stagnant. Okay. So you have to, in order to improve yourself, there's going to be some suck. There's going to be some uncomfortableness. There's going to be some testing. But guess what? When you come out on top and you made that test happen, you're going to feel good about yourself. Then that confidence level starts to come up. And then one thing leads to another. You have another challenge coming up. And you're like, well, last time I almost quit, but I actually did it. And I was happy I did it. Look what happens. You gain confidence. Then you go into the next challenge. And then you take it from there. So one challenge complements the next one. Okay. Once you get good at understanding yourself and what you're able to do, what the way you're thinking, like, I should think differently about this. I should think that this should be a different way of doing it. It's okay though. It's not what I'm used to, but I'm going to try it. Okay. So just believe in yourself when you give yourself those opportunities, because if you want to change, you better change. Change requires you to test yourself. Change requires difference. Okay. Think about that. Well, I'm going to make that change first of the year. And then you just do nothing different. Well, you didn't change anything. You didn't make the change because you didn't change anything. You've got to change things, and being uncomfortable is a very large process, part of that process. I'll say that again. Being uncomfortable is a very large part of that process. And if you're not uncomfortable when you're doing things, if you're not unsure about what your result's going to be, and again, that's the other thing you got to think about is the result. Don't be too overconfident about the result. I don't ever look at a field goal before I make it. I kick the ball first with good form and technique. Then I get to see what that did to the ball. I don't think about making the kick first before I kick it. Okay, there's a process. So trust your process. And if you're good at trusting your process, the sky's the limit, especially if you have the confidence from the previous processes that you took a challenge on and you defeated. That's the best part about this, is when you see yourself, defeat the negative parts. If you see yourself succeed and you made that decision not knowing if it was going to go good or bad, but you said, hey, I'm going to do it anyways. And you did it, and you're so happy that you did. And on the other side too is probably, I can't say this all the time, probably is not going to be as hard as you thought it was either. Okay. So you have to think differently. You have to think outside the box. You have to be uncomfortable, embrace the suck, and just do it. Okay. You'll never know unless you do. Okay. That's the words I'm going to give you today. And just understand that, it may be different than you thought. Okay. Things are going to be different. If you never experienced them before, it's okay. We're all on this earth together. We all were born a baby. We all learned how to walk. We all learned how to do all these things. We're all learning as we grow. Okay. So trust yourself, love yourself, and stay committed to your decisions. And just know there's going to be some uncomfortable situations sometimes. But bottom line, love yourself, do yourself a favor, stick to commitment, and think outside the box. With that said, I hope you guys have an amazing Monday night, and we'll see you next Monday night on another episode of Zealous Wellness with Mike Hollis.
Thank you for watching Zealous Wellness with Mike Hollis. Please like, comment, share, and subscribe. See you next time.